hit my record button, do all my little technical things that I need to do. So anyways, just real quick, a couple things about Warwick's before we get started with tonight's discussion and demo. Warwick's, I know we're in a restricted situation right now, but the store is still open for 25% capacity. So we have got everything going for safety, for your safety, for the employee safety, masks, social distancing. The store is set up so that there's a good egress and all that good stuff. So we're keeping everybody safe because we would like you to come into the store. There's lots of things to see at the store. There's wonderful books and cookbooks. Michael, you want to show your book real quick? Let's show your book. Beautiful books like Modern Kosher right there. And so,
which I signed. So
which you signed. So there are signed copies at the store, which is awesome for a gift, for absolutely a great gift giving time of year. So that would be a wonderful gift for somebody. But if you are not so inclined to come into the store, we'll be putting Michael's book into the comment section tonight. So you can easily click that and we will ship it to you. We can do curbside pickup if you'd like. So there's lots of different ways for you to get books and get Michael's book. There's also great ways for you to participate in tonight's discussion. If you would have a question, we're going to bring in questions live while Michael's doing the demo. So I'm going to be in the background monitoring those. So if Michael's doing something and you have a question, go ahead and pop it in there. And there's a couple seconds delay. So sometimes it takes a little bit for me to see the question, but I'll pop it in to Michael if there's something that you'd like to know. So I think we've given Facebook enough time to let everybody know that we're here, Michael. So I'll do a quick little intro of you. So Michael is an award-winning weekly food writer, 2018 San Diego Press Club Award, 2019 Society of Professional Journalists Award for the San Diego City Beat, and contributor to the San Diego Union Tribune. He writes a San Diego food and travel blog, sdfoodtravel.com, and co-hosts the Art of Spooning podcast on the Specialty Produce Network. Michael also practices business law and litigation in San Diego. Welcome, Michael.
Good to be here.
Yay, we're so glad to have you here tonight. This afternoon, this 4 o'clock hour is always that strange hour. It's like, do you say good afternoon? Do you say good night? I haven't quite figured it out. After all this time, you think I would figure it out since we've been doing these since March. But so I'm going to start off with a big, broad question for you. Tell us what inspired you to create Modern Kosher.
Well, a couple of things. The main one was that my sister married an observant Jew, and as kind of the family occasion cook, that meant that I had to cook kosher. Unfortunately, contrary to mythology, my grandmother was not the greatest cook in the world, and I did not want to cook her food.
Grandma, we're not
She's not here. She's not here.
She might be looking down.
But so I wanted to cook the kind of stuff that that my wife and I had been cooking for ourselves, and we'd previously done for the for the family occasions. And so I realized I needed to come up with some different kosher dishes. And as I started doing it, I thought, why not write these down? Since as a lawyer, I do a lot of writing. I did then, and so I started collecting them. And then I thought, well, why not make them into a cookbook? And so I ended up, late 90s, I ended up going up to UCLA to take a class on cookbook writing. And I literally right around the time the book came out, I found this, which was my kind of final project for the class. And it was the cookbook proposal for the very earliest iteration of the cookbook. Looking back at it, apparently my professor was, he had a lot of comments.
Can I interrupt and ask real quick, what prompted you to take a cookbook writing class back then?
Because I had already become a bit of a cookbook junkie, and there were ones I liked and ones I didn't like. And I realized that people were making a lot of different choices about how to do it. And I wanted to understand those choices better so that I could make better choices about how I was going to do it. And it also promised to teach what that final project was, which is how to write a cookbook proposal to a publisher. And that was really one of the more interesting parts of it. I look back and there are pieces of it that are that made it into the cookbook. Not many of the recipes, ironically, but the basic idea did. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. No, because that's the thing is like that was an interesting decision to take that class. So, what are you gonna demo for us tonight?
Well, it's December, and December is the month of Hanukkah and Christmas, and so I thought that probably something that is related to Hanukkah was the best choice. Christmas probably wouldn't go well with modern kosher, but so Hanukkah is the festival of lights, and lights, way back then was oil, and it dealt with a war between the Maccabees and the Romans. The reality is, the central myth is that we only had enough oil in the lamp of the temple in Jerusalem to last one day, and it lasted 8 days, and that was the central miracle that is at the core of the mythology of Hanukkah. And so our Hanukkah dishes tend to use oil, tend to be fried in oil.
Okay.
And for Ashkenazi Jews in particular, it takes the form of latkes. Latkes are we now think of them as potato pancakes. Shredded potato put in pancake form, and then fried in oil, and often served with either sour cream or applesauce or both.
Okay.
Got to hit the savory, got to hit the sweet.
Exactly.
And fried, what could go wrong other than your heart?
Yeah. But also good.
But also good. And while I do say that my grandmother wasn't the greatest cook, that was one of the things she did really well. And I really, really love that dish, still really love that dish. But a lot of the dishes in this book and a lot of the dishes that I cook are either the dishes that I really hate from a holiday, like say gefilte fish, and I want to find a way to make it good.
Yeah. Is there a way to make it good?
Yes. I've got two gefilte fish dishes here that if I didn't call them gefilte fish, you'd like.
Okay, that's maybe there's something in that.
Yeah, well, we're all used to that big bottle with orange and gelatinous stuff.
Yeah,
that's not and that's a different holiday. That's a different story, but
love it.
For latkes, it was a dish that I liked, but it was the same every year, and I was like, can't we do something different with it? And so I've got in the book, I've got two latke dishes. And there are different approaches. One's a little bit close, a little bit back towards the original. This one is a bit more restauranty.
Okay.
So
so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop off the screen and let you take over and start the demo.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yep. So the dish is called latkes with smoked salmon, pickled blackberry, and wasabi cream. In the book, I give two different ways to cook it. One that's a little more something that a home cook is more likely to do, a little bit back closer to the original, and the other is a more restauranty approach to it, a little bit more precision. At the core of it is a mixture of grated potatoes, onion, some seasonings, potato starch. What else do I have in there? Baking powder, and seasonings. And for the traditional, what you would do is you would take this mixture here and put two. Let's get it going. Get some pan oil. I use grapeseed oil. And I use it because it tends to have a very high smoking point, and that's a particularly good way to do it.
So no measuring needed for this, just eyeballing it.
Yeah, I call out, I believe, 2 tablespoons in the cookbook, and that's about what you want. I've been doing this long enough. I can pretty much eyeball 2 tablespoons. Worst comes to worst, this. Now, while that's heating, one of the important things about this dish is the garnishes. Pickled blackberries is a key to the dish. That's kind of a nod to the, a little bit while I talk. It's kind of a nod to the applesauce in the traditional. I basically pickle it in apple vinegar. The reason I'm saying it's key is because that's something you've got to start ahead of time. It should sit up in the fridge after you've put it in the can for about a week before you're going to get to the optimal flavor. You don't want to get through to the end of it and say, "Oh, bloody murder! I didn't do the pickled blackberries." So,
is that a pretty simple recipe to do those blackberries?
It's very simple. I mean, I have a whole bunch of spices in there. I've got allspice. I've got juniper. I've got bay leaves that I use to flavor the brine, and they add a lot of really interesting notes. Would it really fundamentally change the dish if you just did a solution of salt, sugar, and vinegar, and maybe some water? No, it would be just fine, and it would be absolutely delicious. But point is, you really want those to sit for a week before they're going to reach their optimal flavor. So if you know you're going to do it, that's something you should do. They'll last for a while in the fridge. So for example, these I'm planning to use. I'm planning to use for Hanukkah this year, and that's going to be a couple of weeks. So
okay, so they last a while.
They last well if you properly can them. If you if you process the you properly boil the jar and the hardware, and you keep them clean, they'll be great. But yeah, so that's that. For the fancy version, instead of just putting it in there, I have a ring mold. I'm going to take about 2 tablespoons of the mixture. I'm going to put it in the ring mold. Use a white wine, or in this case, champagne flute glass. No, I'm not planning on drinking champagne during this demo. And just tamp it down. And what comes out is something that we'll see later. It's a rather nice, somewhat more precise pancake, puffed up pancake. But not everyone's going to want to do that. So once we get this up to speed.
Here's a question for you. So because you have the gussied up ones, why do that to the traditional food?
Because it looks pretty.
I love that answer.
Because it looks elegant. Because it elevates the affair. And the simple fact is that we eat with our eyes first. Mm-hmm. We like food that looks good. We like it a little more if it looks good than if it tastes good but doesn't look good. Does that mean that it's better? No. Some of the best tasting food in the world, some of my favorite food in the world doesn't look good. But I just like if I can make it a little bit more precise, a little bit more elegant, I'm going to do so, and that's why I give both options in the book.
Yep, and that's the thing when you're celebrating at a holiday. It's it's a celebration. So make it everybody puts out their best china, their best everything. So might as well make the food look good too.
So putting about 2 tablespoons in here. And even though I'm not using the ring mold, I'm trying to get a nice shape. I had it on high. I'm going to turn it down to about medium high. Let that cook for a little while. Let's talk about some of the other garnishes. This, you can see it, is a wasabi sour cream. Same wasabi that you would get at sushi. Mix a little bit of that in with some plain old sour cream. Doesn't even have to be best quality. better quality, it's going to be better. But here it's not going to be that important because the flavor of the wasabi is going to probably cover up any of the minute differences. A little bit of apple cider vinegar, again going to that traditional applesauce and sour cream bit that is traditional for latkes. Let's see how we done here.
So in what you put in the pan, is that just shredded potatoes?
That's shredded potatoes. That's shredded potatoes, shredded onions, just a regular onion. Now, again, if you're being all restauranty, you're going to shred it by hand. You're not going to use a Cuisinart. I cheated. I used a Cuisinart. And is there a difference? Yes. Is it better if you do it by hand? Yes. You have more control of the exact size, and you can adjust that, which is really with a Cuisinart. There isn't a large range of shredding attachments.
That's interesting because I would have thought that doing it in the Cuisinart would have been more precise.
It isn't. It isn't. I mean, because you just don't have as much control of the size that you're shredding it to.
Interesting.
With a normal box grater, you've got 4 sides with 4 different sizes of the resulting shredded product.
Interesting.
And so you don't have that here. But A, it's a lot faster. B, it's probably I tend to use the largest one anyway, even when I'm doing it by hand. But I call out using either in the cookbook, but generally when I do it for myself, I do use the Cuisinart. Okay, so now flip it over.
So we're at about what, 2 or 3 minutes on each side of those, or a little more?
Ultimately you want about 10 to 15 minutes, total cooking time. About 2 to 3 minutes aside. And you're going to feel it at the end. How long it's actually going to take. I mean, I can tell you, I don't remember exactly what I called out there. I'm just going by the look of it. What did I say? Yeah, 2 to 3 minutes. But it's going to depend on the exact consistency of the. Nancy, can you give me a plate? I realize I forgot that. It's going to depend on the exact consistency of the batter. That's what's going to really be the ultimate determinant, and that's why you have to look at it. Ultimately, you have to poke it, you have to feel it. 2 of those, yes. So there's that. The next of the garnishes is the pickled red onions. Again, a very simple pickle. This one is just salt, sugar, bay leaf, chili pepper, and then red wine vinegar and a little bit of water. Very basic pickle. You can pickle just about anything in that. It's going to taste better. Here, we're taking a savory item like red onions and making it a little bit sweeter. With the pickled blackberries, we're going the other way. We're taking a sweet item and essentially giving it a bit of a savory character. Maybe the pièce de résistance of the dish is smoked salmon, which I've cut and curled into florets. And then, just because we're trying to look all gussied up, here, I've got right there some radish sprouts. You can use,
yum.
You can use absolutely any kind of microgreen or sprout or flour, edible flour.
Charlie's asking on here, now you didn't use the rings to cook the ones that you're doing right now, but when you do use the ring, do you flip it in the ring?
That's a really good question. A really good question. And I'll give you an idea of exactly how I do it using the plate that I'm going to ultimately plate those on. Here. So let's assume that this is the on the range. I've got the latke in here. What I do is I use my tongs.
We can't quite see, I don't think. Hold on, let me see if we can see here.
You see now? Actually, I'll do it over here. So I've got the ring mold here. The latke is in the bottom here. I take my tongs. Because you definitely do not, and I will tell you that I inexplicably did on one occasion. I grabbed it.
Yeah. I think we've all made that mistake.
So you take your tongs, you slip a spatula underneath it, and you lift up with the spatula, turn it over. Then you get your white wine glass. Why do I say white? Am I prejudiced against red? No, but red wine glasses tend to have larger bases, so they're not going to fit into the ring mold. And so, again, holding it with the tongs, you push it down using the base of the wine glass until it's in contact with the metal. Does that answer your question?
That answered Charlie's question. You do flip it. You do flip the ring.
Yep. And that's how you do it.
Yeah.
So here we are. Let's see whether I can find a place, pull this back.
Yeah, there you go. There we can see. Yep.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spoon. Use that one. I'm going to take a dollop of, I'm sorry I didn't buy Daisy, but a dollop of the wasabi sour cream right here. I'm going to take some of our wonderful smoked salmon, pop it here. I'm going to take pickled blackberry, pop it there. Here we got the pickled onions.
Even though that's not the fancy one, it's looking very fancy.
It's, I can't, I guess I just can't help doing a little bit of that.
Looks good. So not very many of those microgreens. I mean, just a little bit.
Yeah, it's as much for looks, and I chose the radishes, the radish sprouts, because it has just a little bit of bite.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the criticisms you hear of Ashkenazi Jewish food is that its flavors are muted. Yeah, I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all. I think that I absolutely love spicy food. Working on an article on Sichuan hot pot right now. My next book is probably going to be about Mexican food. I love that stuff, but I don't think that there's anything that's uses a lot of garlic, uses a lot of big flavors, just perhaps not the spicy ones, but a little bit of the bite here, I think does help.
That looks fantastic. Let's fold it down a little bit towards the camera.
Yeah, it is. There we go.
There you go. Yeah, that's perfect.
So
that looks fantastic.
That's the non-fancy one. To fancify it. Wait, where's the other one? Oh, right. We're fake cooking the other one.
So you just mentioned other food types. So this is more of an inquiring minds question. So do you keep kosher?
I do not keep kosher. And I actually have never kept kosher. The reason that I ended up doing Kosher Cookbook was because I had to cook kosher, not because not because I decided that I was going to cook kosher or grow up that way. And really, in many ways, the central idea of the book is and always has been that kosher is a set of laws. I'm a lawyer. I look at kosher as a set of laws, and I look at what you can do with the food in many ways the same way that I have advised clients. I advise them what they can do within the law, and I think of kosher food the same way. What can you do? I don't focus on the fact that that you can't cook pork. Mm-hmm. You can cook duck. It's similarly fatty, similarly incredibly flavorful, and I focus on what can be done. And when I realized that, I realized that cooking kosher for the for the family meals, and then developing kosher food for the book, really was again about what can be done. And then I looked at it a little further, and I realized, well, wait a minute, this is what Jews have done from time immemorial. From the beginning of the diaspora, Jews who had been in the land of Israel / Palestine are they're now going to be in Northern Europe. Well, actually, they're then going to be in Spain. Totally different environment, different animals, different plants, different vegetables. And so, how do you adapt the food to the new land? Well, the laws of kosher tell you what you can do, and you can choose what to do within there. We're kicked out of Spain in 1492. Some go to Italy, some go up into Europe, some go to Turkey. And the questions, the question is the same: what can we do in these new lands? Mm-hmm. And then, the 20th century comes along halfway through. We're headed back to Israel. Mm-hmm. And now we got to take the food that was that we were eating in, say, Russia, and adapt it to a desert environment. And so that's had some absolutely major effects on the food of the people were eating. And that may be a question, but the answer is the same. It's what the laws of kosher tell us what we can do. Imagination fills in the rest.
Interesting. Yeah. And that's the thing, is that you have to be able to get the food you have to be able to procure from whatever environment you're in.
Yep. Absolutely.
Which brings up another question. I'm going to let you do that, and then we'll get to another question about, because you sort of brought it up in the sort of maybe a sub-theme in the book, is the New Israel cuisine.
Yep.
And what that means.
Well, new Israeli cuisine, one, it's kind of taken the foodie world a little bit by storm. Yotam Ottolenghi is an Israeli chef who moved to England. Ironically, his partner was an Israeli Palestinian, and the two of them have created just some amazing food at their at the restaurants in London, and created an incredible series of cookbooks. Then we have some American chefs who are doing the same things, Zahav in Philadelphia, and what it basically is the food that we created / recreated / stole / adapted as we went back to Israel. And that's been, it's been one of the hot, well, the Mediterranean diet's been hot for a long time, and this is just another incarnation of it. But it's made for some, just some fascinating dishes that combine a lot of these different, a lot of these different influences. I don't know, does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what are you doing there? What are you doing there now?
I'm just planing up the semi-fancy one.
Okay. With the same ingredients?
Same ingredients, absolutely. It's the same dish. It's just presented in a different way. This is the way that it might be presented if it were in a restaurant.
Got it.
Which it probably never will be, because I'm not opening a restaurant.
Well, so not in the next few weeks or months, you may not, but Who
No, I
knows?
never. I've represented restaurants enough to know that there's absolutely no good reason that could convince me to open a restaurant. Yeah, especially with the way that the restaurant industry has suffered in COVID-19 times.
Right. So you just recommend good restaurants for people to go to?
Yes. Yes.
Give us your top. Do you have some top ones in San Diego you want to tell us about?
I would absolutely say I love Addison. I had the good opportunity, good fortune to be able to stage there for a few days a number of years back, and see the way it works from the inside, and the level of precision is just absolutely incredible. It's quite literally up there with Thomas Keller and French Laundry.
Wow.
In fact, Keller is a huge fan and is a huge supporter of Addison. I think what Bradley is doing there has been incredible for a long time and remains incredible.
Where's that located?
It's in the San Diego part of Del Mar at the Grand Hotel. I would, it's expensive and worth every penny. It's the only restaurant right now in San Diego that has a Michelin star. But I would bet that the next one is going to be Jeune et Jolie in Carlsbad, right near you.
Yeah.
I thought they were fantastic under their original chef, but Eric Close from LA has come down and really kicked a place up a notch that I thought was already worthy of a Michelin star.
What's the name of it?
Jeune et Jolie.
Okay.
Jeune and Jolie, Jolie, young and pretty.
Oh,
is the translation. I don't know that this is ever going to be worth a Michelin star.
But it looks really good. Either way, that's looking awesome. That is to make somebody's table look very fancy for Hanukkah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to come back on and we'll finish up with a couple more questions here. So you were talking about a little back as far as like family recipes. Do you have other, you're talking about your grandmother's recipes, but were there other family recipes that your mom maybe make? What are some of your other favorite ones?
Family recipes. Well, my mom is absolutely legendary in the family for her soups. And there's I don't think there's anyone in our family who does not know what a Vita soup is. It's a vegetable soup, and it's basically taking the art of the refrigerator soup to a new and higher level. People talk about food of love. Well, that was Mom's food of love.
Love it.
Yeah.
So where did you learn how to cook?
Mostly cookbooks. I learned from my mom, and I can remember I was probably about 14 when weekend breakfasts were mine. I do all sorts of different things with eggs and do omelets that had so much complex stuff in them that they were bursting out and they fell apart and they were horrible. But I worked in a Jack in the Box, and I guess I learned how to flip hamburgers and stuff like that.
But those places like that really teach you some very basic fundamentals, though, right?
They absolutely do. And one of the things that believe it or not that Jack in the Box taught me was the importance of presentation and of precision in presentation. If every hamburger did not look exactly the same, I got bitched out. And I got bitched out a lot.
But that's the thing, is that they have a product that people are wanting to look at the same way every time they order it.
And I'm sitting at Addison, watching a service. And Chef Bradley is very quietly bitching out a guy on the fish station for having not done the presentation on a dish right. And he sends him back to do it again, and it comes out again. And I look at it and I've never been more terrified in the kitchen in my life, because I, for the life of me, could not figure out what was wrong with that plate. But there was still something very wrong with that plate.
Wow.
And, you know, and it was driving home that night that I thought about it and said, that's not really all that different than Jack in the Box. I mean, totally different than Jack in the Box,
but
not all that different than Jack in the Box at the same time. You know,
really interesting. That's an interesting connection.
Yeah, you know, after my wife and I lost our house in the Oakland fire, we rented a place in San Francisco, and I felt the compulsion to go into the kitchen. You know, when you lose a home, you want to get all homey, and so that's when I really started cooking in earnest, and started with some books on Cajun Creole cuisine, and then Thomas Keller's French Laundry Cookbook, and I won't say I cooked everything in there, because I didn't, but I cooked a lot of things in there, and that's where I really began to try to really up my game and learn it the way that someone who actually cared about it would learn it.
Yeah, really master those techniques.
And more. Actually, I think the part of that book that was so influential to me was he has, I'd say, every 20, 30 pages in there, the importance of blank. So one that sticks out right now is the importance of trussing a chicken. And he goes through not just the culinary importance of it, but also the importance of the discipline of doing it and doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, though that whole series of little essays taught me a lot about how you have to approach food. And it goes back to a question you asked me: why? This is a perfectly good and pretty dish.
Right.
This takes it to a different level. And I like to look at it and say, if I'm going to do this, how much harder is it to do this?
Right.
Why would I not do that? Why would I choose not to do that? Well, there's a lot of reasons. There's a heck of a lot of reasons, but it is not the answer that's the question. That's the important thing. It's the thinking through the question.
And the process of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one final question before we let you go here. So we'll kind of circle back to the book a little bit. So one of the themes that's apparent in the book is that kosher food is a living, breathing process, not a museum piece.
Right.
So can you explain and expand on that a little bit?
Well, it goes back to something that I was talking about a bit earlier. We didn't, when we left Israel at the beginning of the diaspora,
right?
Suddenly ripped from our homes, kind of like I was from the home in the Oakland fire.
Right.
We took our group of dishes with us, and we found out we could not do them because the foodstuffs that we were used to weren't where we ended up. Obviously, that's exaggeration, but it's also true. And kosher food has continued to change, because the kosher food of Ashkenazi Jews in Poland and Germany, frankly, bore more similarity to Polish and German and Russian food than it did to the food of the land of Israel when we left, or today, or ever. It's always changing. It's the application of that group of laws to the foodstuffs around us at the farmer's market,
right?
In the supermarket. Let's say we get on a plane and fly to Scandinavia. Well, you can be kosher in Scandinavia. You're probably going to have different foodstuffs. Right. You're probably going to be pickling fish.
Yeah.
It's so it is a living, breathing thing. It's a process. It's the way you look at the laws and you ask the question, what can I do within them?
And so, in other words, don't be afraid of it. Don't be narrow in your thought process for it.
And going back to the, if I were writing a Keller-like essay about that, I would say, don't go into the supermarket with an absolute ironclad idea of what you're going to cook.
Mm.
If you go in and you were going to roast a chicken and you look at those chickens and they're kind of like yellowish and brownish around the edge and they look like they've been sitting there for a week and a half, might be a good idea to go make a hamburger instead.
Make a hamburger. Go to the fish department.
Although frankly, if they can't take care of the chicken, they probably don't.
That's a good point. That's a good point with that. Yeah, you probably would want to stay away from that. It might be a strictly veggie meal that you're making.
Right. Vegan is best. Yeah.
So I know that this is, we're celebrating modern kosher, and I know it's kind of frustrating. But do you have plans to write any other books?
Yes, I've written a cookbook proposal for a book that I'm calling Borderlands. It's about the food of Baja on both sides of the border, both south of the border and north of the border. Hopefully I'll be getting that in pretty soon. And then
that sounds terrific.
A third cookbook that I'm beginning to work on is going to be called Modern American Chinese. And it's looking at that genre of American Chinese food that isn't quite Chinese, and it's not. It's either not quite or entirely American, and looking at either where it came from, because a lot of these dishes are based on original dishes that have been either recent or longstanding in China. And really going back to the original dishes that they were drawing on, or taking them and kicking them up a notch and refining them, and taking the basic ideas that make them work, the DNA of the dish, and using better ingredients and maybe different techniques, either more precise techniques or more traditional Chinese techniques, to make them better. So
that sounds interesting.
What's the next two?
There you go. And for everybody that's out there, I know that you do a podcast. What's another good way for people to find you? Do you have a website? Do you have places where people can find you?
My website is www.sdfoodtravel.com.
Okay.
I haven't been as focused on that of late. And a lot of my stuff is really on Instagram. I'm at sdfoodtravel on Instagram.
Instagram is where you keep up most of the information. People can find that on the website if they need to, though.
Yeah,
a link to it.
Yeah, absolutely. But just go to Instagram. Actually, for in the food community, it's strange because you can't taste anything through Instagram, but it's also a very visual medium, and food is very subject to that. And so a lot of people in the food world, hang out on Instagram, and there's less political arguments.
True. That's true. And to your point, making something look nice,
yes,
it photographs well for Instagram.
Yep, absolutely.
Michael, it's been so much fun hosting you tonight.
It's been great to be here. And
yeah,
if anyone has any questions, feel free to shoot me an email at mgardiner, Gardiner, at sdfoodtravel.com.
Perfect. And we have signed books at the store. You can order it. We have it in the comment section here. So with that, we are going to say good night, and we will take us off of Facebook. So thanks, Michael.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.